marketing trends for 2026.
You can't tell me what your ICP across roles in the buying committee, what their calendar looks like on a day-to-day. You don't have the context of where you fit into their day and which digital channel is going to have the highest trust signal. We have to build stuff that we don't know how to build. Generative search has demolished top of the funnel marketing. What's harder to replace is which bets should you make and which segments to prioritize.
After having quite difficult, overwhelmed, frustrating experience, what prompted you that, okay, you are ready for the second channel?
I started to design my life around actual constraints.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of SaaSy Moms. I'm Wendy.
And I'm Anya. You know, AI reshapes a lot of industries, including marketing. So today we're going to talk about, top marketing trends for 2026. And we are very pleased to be joined by Chae O'Brien, who is a go-to-market strategist, as well as the owner of a Thought Bakery, basically a go-to-market agency that helps companies with their marketing needs. Welcome, Chae. How are you?
Hi, Wendy and Anna. It's so great to be here. I love your podcast. I love the name of your podcast. So I'm really excited to dive in.
Awesome.
That's amazing.
Yeah, maybe we'll get started. So the audience know a little bit more about you, Chae. Maybe just a little bit on your background professionally and personally.
Sure. So I'm dating myself here, but about 17 years ago, I started my career in oil and gas and global energy. And then skip a decade later, I became CMO of an engineering service company when I was around 28. And that was my first sort of deep-seated run in a marketing function. Before that, my post-grad is like in finance, and starting as an operator really set the stage for being in a marketing seat, really running and executing alongside my team, not just leading and delegating. I moved to New York a decade ago. And I jumped into digital media, specific both on the agency side and the publisher side. Really spending time with audience data teams and helping, especially brands, understand what kind of value they can get from hyper targeting and audience segmentation. So you'll hear me talk about first-party data a lot. Normally, because of the age of AI, it's probably liquid gold. And that led me to creating my own go-to-market studio. We call it a studio because we're a small but mighty team of 3-4 people, but we work with a network of like 90 creatives, primarily with startups who are either in their stealth journey or approaching Series A. And they are looking not just to grow, but to create a formidable go-to-market base. Understand their ICP, especially when there's a lack of ICP data or customer data. So working on key narratives and having that translate into scalable systems. And scalable systems are now no longer as expensive and drawn out as they used to be with AI, because we can iterate and prototype pretty quickly.
Okay, that's awesome. And that's, I guess, one of the questions that I have. Maybe I'm jumping a little bit ahead, but now as we are on the topic of startups, all startups usually don't have a lot of budget. So can you just maybe give us some tips or advice on what should startups use as their strategies, assuming they don't have a lot of budget? Like, how can a startup, where a startup should even start? Because it looks like there are a lot of tools right now, a lot of, different channels. Even for us, we're a podcast, we're like a little startup, we are spread all over the place. So what are the things that you would recommend like small startup owners to look at currently as their go-to-market strategies?
So I always recommend we take a couple steps back. And before we get to distro and promo, we've got to really understand the day-to-day calendar of your ICP. Like I ask clients this, and some of them get quite pissed off when I do because it seems too specific and nuanced. But you really need, if you can't tell me what your ICP across roles in the buying committee, what their calendar looks like on a day-to-day, you don't have the context of where you fit into their day and which distro channel is going to have the highest trust signaling. So let's take a CTO, for instance, of a Fortune 500 company. This is a person who has $1 million paycheck, right? They're not in their LinkedIn DMs constantly. And, they're getting a gazillion, even let's just say you make it past their email blockers, right? They're getting cold, lots of wonderful outbound messages, lots of free gifts, whatever. Everybody's trying to get their attention. But what people really appreciate is when you've taken the time to understand where your solution provides the most value for their personal ambition, because personal ambitions drive professional outcomes. So going back to that thing of where do we start? So let's say it's a B2B play. We look at the buying committee and we say, okay, is tooling a constant conversation? So like one of my clients, they are in the app modernization space. Modernization is a massive project that is just always top of mind for CTOs and massive dev teams. So we know it's top of mind, but what within modernization? And then how do they make those tooling decisions? Is it referral based? What does their stack look like now? When we look at the kind of intelligence we can get with platforms, with data enrichment tools like Play, where we can run, a website stack, their entire company stack, how big their teams are, the different roles within their teams. That is where we start, because then we'll say, you know what? Let's say the ICP for a stealth startup is to get in front of a CTO, even a CISO within massive, or even let's say mid-market enterprises. Then we've got to think, okay, where are we going to get our best bang for buck? Is it going to be an ad campaign? Probably not, because we really need those cookies to run and be familiar and have brand awareness work. And then you have to do trust signaling in other formats. How can we be most direct, right? Maybe it's something that's like pitchy activation, where we actually send them something and we customize what we're saying. Maybe it is an outbound campaign that is really, really, really digging into what we believe their day-to-day looks like and constantly iterating on the pain points that they have in the context of the value of the product we created. But it has to be where we believe the trust signaling is going to be high. I use this example all the time. You don't really go on Tinder to find an accountant. I mean, you may find accountants there, whether or not they want to do your accounting, I'm not sure, right? It's the same thing with when we look at tooling in SaaS, right? Every SaaS company is a tool of some kind. But different types of tools come with different layers of decision making. And the buying committee can be 5, it could be 15. It also depends on the size of the firm, the geography of the firm. So like I coach French companies moving to the US, they make decisions very differently, right? So getting into the head of your ICP and understanding where they trust information on the tooling that your product is providing and starting there. How can we get budget there? And if we can't get budget there, maybe we can hack this a little bit. So we know they're on Reddit, right? But we don't, the thing is with Reddit, it's a long game. So we don't have a profile, we haven't been active there. So let's start. Maybe we can collaborate with another account. Maybe we can try and, create a 3-month hold and work really hard at getting to our first AMA. Sometimes it's as simple as doing a meetup, right? People now are starved for, a lot of the playbooks are being rewritten and we have to build stuff that we don't know how to build. Like that's the thing with AI. Idealistically, it all sounds very nice. If ever you start to go into make or N8N and you start to build workflows yourself, I tell you, there are so many times like I want you to pull out my hair. So when we talk about SaaS tooling, especially AI native SaaS tooling, people actually want IRL experiences. They want to meet in person and hack it together. And that tends to be a cost-effective way. Your biggest spend is going to be the space if you can't get a free space. But folks are not looking for you to have a 5-course dinner. They're literally some coffee, some pastries, and really good content. Okay, we're going to build XYZ, or we're going to show you how to use our platform, and we're going to do it one-on-one with you, right? But that's where I always recommend we start. Where is the trust signaling now for your ICP? Can we afford being there? If we cannot, what is the secondary trust signal to that, right? And then start to work to compound, because everything we do, we should create derivative media out of it. We have an in-person event, we should be recording it, right? Like the tools we have now between Descript and Riverside, it's crazy what we can do. And it's not going to look like a Salesforce ad, which, is like usually 5 figures, but it's going to look pretty good. And in a world where AI is increasing the distrust of what we're seeing, things with a little bit of flaws or not really that polished, they're going to resonate because they're real and they're representative of something that actually happened, versus we have to wonder if it was just edited.
No, it resonated with me a lot as you were mentioning it, because in like even my marketing career, it's all about understanding the pains of who you're targeting. If you don't understand that pain, either it's like personal, financial, or business, you can't share what that gain looks like. And you have to really uncover that pain. So it really resonated with me a lot. And I think even what you said about like where we can leverage AI. Like AI can't replace like that knowledge that you have about your ICP and all those like messaging that was really tailored to the ICP. And where you're saying like where AI can really help is like, hey, making derivatives of things that you already set up. And then that's exactly how I'm really leveraging AI as well. So that really resonated with me a lot. But going back to a point that you made, right? Like you seeing your biggest really the where you're seeing the biggest growth for SaaS, small businesses are okay, understanding the ICP, figuring out where that, growth or that trigger point is, and then, leveraging that. Can you walk us through like how can you help, how do you usually help like a small business? Okay, so understanding that, figuring out that, what are some of the things that you can guide like a small business? Because a lot of our audience are primarily, startups and, people that are maybe a single marketer. Like, how can they scale? Can you walk us through some of
So
that?
that's I think one of the most awesome things about 2026 is going to be the year of the workflow. So 2023 to 2025 was a lot of AI hype and supposition about what it can do, what it actually does, us actually trying to build. I remember once my first time with N8N, I was doing it alongside GPT, and it took me 45 minutes till GPT can tell me, actually, you don't have the right tier. 45 minutes to get to that point.
Yeah.
When we sit with, especially when we have startups now that have one marketer and they are running a full funnel ABM campaigns, they are using Play, Slack. Sometimes there's a lot of the APIs you can access via Clay, and then their MCP of choice or their AI of choice. We're seeing things like the connection between Claude and Figma, where we can create a template of creatives, have 80 different ad creatives based on a keyword. It does take learning, but what I advocate for is that if we have a 1 to 3 person go-to-market team and we have a 5 to 10 ARR goal, we have to put in the time in the short term so we can really scale like a big team does in the long term without increasing headcount. Because AI orchestration is really where small teams are going to excel in staying small and operating at the capacity of a mid-market team. Orchestration takes time. Because when we move past, okay, we're sure of the ICP, we know where we know they're on this channel and we like this kind of content and we have these topic clusters. All of that doesn't matter a ton if we cannot put this into a cohesive program to have signaling across our very dynamic funnel, because we know funnels are not linear, right? And I would even say generative search has demolished top of the funnel marketing. What do I mean by that? Like there was a time where you could see top of it, you could see the likes and the comments and the initial like, oh, there is appetite for this, right? People know the brand, they're clicking in, we're seeing them on the blog. Generative search is just allowing us to skip the middle of the funnel. So I would say that is the other bet, especially in 2026. You want to have full visibility into your citations, right? If you're in a startup and if you are a single marketer working for a SaaS startup, it's probably the best play you can have in setting up whether or not you onboard tools like Profound. Profound just launched a $99 per month tier. Before it was like 3 figures, I think. And it's a wonderful tool. It's an entail tool. There's a few other tools that are coming out. I don't know the efficacy against Profound, and I'm not incentivized by them at all. I just follow, and it's probably one of the tools that are more trusted by enterprises in the Fortune 500 for AEO. That is going to be really where we need to dig deep, because where we're being cited and what we're being cited for gives us a direct indication of what queries are against our brand. Do we have product specific queries happening? Do we have brand specific queries happening? Like, do people want case studies? Are they going to competitive analyses? That is really where your efforts should focus, because if you don't have visibility into your AI visibility or generative search visibility, you're flying blind based on how B2B audiences are adapting in the research cycle.
Mm-hmm.
They're just skipping ahead, finding what they want, and then validating with their peer network and other channels. I always say it's like a DNA, it's like a helix, right? Or even like an atom. So brand is at the center, but they bounce around, right? Because sometimes you go on the website, then you come off the website, then you go on their LinkedIn page, and you look through their CEO, then you look through the CEO post, and you clicked on the blog that he wrote that took you to his Substack. Then from the Substack, you went back to the website, and just so you go. And then you'll end up probably asking, like, I don't know how much we can say there are blind decisions being made, but usually there's like, especially the executive peer circles or the team have feedback, whether they did a video, whether they did a demo, or they have other peers in this circle who will use the tool. But having visibility into your AI generative search citations is going to be a huge opportunity for 2026. Because if you can go to your CEO and say, look, we don't have a massive budget, but for these queries against our competitors, we're being cited 9 out of 10 times. And there are these other, like, we run something called like a triple semantic exercise. We build it in Claude, and you can see all the things that the AI will cite you for, or that it believes you are known for, because it does the clustering, right? The other thing is, as marketers, we spent a lot of time looking at brand as a creative lever, and it is. But AI strips our creative language out. So when we want to be known for something, especially if you're like stealth to Series A or even Series B, we've got to kind of say the same thing as much as possible in a very robust way across industries, across roles, and across use cases. Because then it just kind of cancels it out when there isn't density of information that's available to attribute your company and your solution to that query. So I'm hoping I answered the question, but especially for single marketers and small startups, you want a growth play in 2026. Working on your organic citations is going to be a long and short-term play that's going to pay off. And at some point, we're going to see these search engines incentivize it, which is going to be sad. But you want to start from now. And it's not that different. Funny thing is, like, you have, oh, SEO is dead. It's the same kind of thing. You have to focus on context. We're not doing keywords, but we're doing phrases or queries. So it's the same exercise, but it is fatiguing because it just kind of feel like we're starting over.
No, tell me about it. I think it's like it's like this lens of like SEO and now the citations, AI engines is a different way of thinking. So I think like even myself, like I have to learn through all that to fully understand it, right? But speaking of that, based on your experience with working with a lot of startups and marketing and your experience in marketing, where do you see like what functions of marketing you think could be replaced by AI? And if so, like how should marketers protect their role or like protect their value in the era of AI? Where do you see that?
So the hardest thing is that we have to sort of suppress how we've learned marketing for the decade before so that we can relearn it for the decade ahead. And especially for folks that are between the ages of, let's say, 42 to 55, it's really, really anxiety riddling because they've done the time, right? Usually like 20 years in, I have a strong sense of self, of how to lead, how to delegate, how to build. And AI has demolished all of those playbooks. So when we look at emails, landing pages, case studies, you can't look at a case study anymore as problem, solution, results, right? And we have a template and we all go put it in Google Docs and then we send it to design and then they tweak an icon. We're turning case studies into videos, into landing pages. We're having landing pages customized by IP. If you integrate Clay with Webflow and you go on a custom landing page, you're going to see your company name and your company's brand. The degree of personalization with AI is so, it's not the degree, I would say the intensity of personalization is growing, that we cannot look at assets anymore as the output. It as a campaign is 4 assets or it's 3 assets. We have to redefine how we look at the success of a campaign. What really is a campaign, right? What is the engine that drives derivative content? How do we build an always on derivative engine, right? That's what AI is going to demolish. So the person, and it's sad to say it, but the person who will sit and take 12 weeks to make an ebook, or the team, I should say, between writing, illustration, framing it out. And we did this as an agency. There was a ebook that took 20 weeks. It was crazy, right? Just because you had like 15 stakeholders and like you can't talking about that now, you'll seem archaic, right? You can literally between Canva and GPT just using your memory. Preparing for this podcast, I took your questions and using my GPT memory, saying answer them, but get very much to the core of my ethos, which it knows what it means by that, right? Because I have certain ways that I communicate with AI for it to have context. When we think about that at the company level, we've got all this first party data. It's no longer with AI, it's no longer about what can we promote, it's what can we prove. Because in your data has all of these wonderful proof signals that now you can literally create custom. You can have an automation from sales where sales requests an ABM campaign in Slack and a landing page, a one pager, and a video is created and sent back to sales to send specifically for that account. Like that's where we are now. So when we talk about what is AI going to really change, what it does really well is being a copy assistant, writing emails, landing pages, writing different assets, list building, enrichment, simple lead scoring, reporting. Like, we're not going to have these massive strategy decks and documents. I mean, teams are going to do it for a little bit of time, right? At least the next 2 years or so, right? But what's harder to replace is which bets should you make and which segments to prioritize. Even with sophisticated agents, there's nuance to that. And coming back to what we were talking about, where does that nuance sit in their day to day? Because with the growth of AI, we also have the growth of job insecurity. And when you have a growth of insecurity, you have an increase of caution. If we have an increase of caution in decision making, we have an increase of distrust when a brand is trying to promote to us. So as a marketer, we've got to figure out, how do we design thought? This is kind of like our tagline, but how do you design thoughtfully anything, any experience, and to enable connecting meaningfully? And that will sit with the marketer. Even if you can orchestrate the best of agents, even if you've got a really awesome GPT, deciding which bets to make, especially across segments, will sit with the human. The other thing is like sharp points of view, right? Sometimes you want to take an unpopular opinion and you can brainstorm with AI, but that takes human creativity. Having difficult conversations about positioning, pricing, and trade-offs, the AI can tell you, yes, you should be priced out higher or lower, or we should have segment-specific pricing. But that stakeholder buy-in, that's AI is not helping that, because people within teams, especially across generations, have different trust levels with AI outputs. So to just answer the question more formidably is, AI is going to replace anything that an assistant can do, as in an administrative assistant capability. But when it comes to byproducts of the human condition, anything that is segment nuance, segment behavior, stakeholder buying, and building trust across functions, you definitely need a human being. So instead of having all of those meetings for us to say what the ebook should have in it and why the cover is in blue and not black, we're going to have a lot of meetings of like, hey folks, we're building 20 landing pages all over the next 6 months. I've built this tool for us in Lovable. We need to update our brand identity. Can I get design to jump on that? And then maybe the head of design is going to say, okay, but I really want to sit down because I want us to have multiple templates. And that's how our conversations are changing. But our title doesn't necessarily have to change. The titles are changing. So we have AI engineers. We have a play on what was called the forward deployed engineer, which was a term made famous by Palantir and companies, people that worked at Palantir, which is kind of like, it's a customer facing like solutions architect. So you build with the customer. And marketers now are being asked to do that. So you're a marketing manager or a marketing director, but what you're really being asked to do now is, okay, I need you to build and scale our ability to create, maintaining high fidelity experiences, and use the time you've gotten back to champion faster decision making by means of building stronger relationships and getting more meaningful data across the org. I hope I didn't ramble there.
No, I think a lot of things that you mentioned were really resonating with me, because like we actually, Anya and I had a chat about like, hey, would PMM go away in the era of AI, right? And I think it really boils down to exactly what you said, is those understanding of the different personas or different pain points, and like boiling it down to like, okay, how does our solution really differentiate from the rest of the, like those you can't really create through AI, right? So I think it really boils down to that. And then what you mentioned as well, I'm like, I don't even remember the era before AI now, like taking 20 hours or whatever, like doing an ebook. I'm like, yes, the painful days.
Every page, like, someone has to vet the intro page, the executive summary. Someone has to vet every diagram, and we have to be like this color doesn't like the thing is AI can increasingly do marketing tasks, but it can't yet own the political, emotional, and strategic layers that make or break GTM. And I actually think the role of the PMM will continue to rise, because PMM sits right between the point of brand and demand of saying like, can I say that? Oh, sure, we can do this. Or like, sure, let's really augment this USP. And that USP ties into this other USP. And then competitive intelligence is telling us that we really should push this to sales. And I think PMMs are going to become even more an ally with the sales team because we're seeing marketing teams with AI becoming revenue forward. So MQLs will die a natural death, right? It's not going to really matter what came from form fills. It's really going to be about what contributes to pipeline. And we see a lot of CMOs moving to CRO roles. And I think that is enabling more security. Like it's a part of our path now of being a marketer that's has revenue centric goals because we know that's going to bode well for our future career in really showing the proof of orchestration and signaling and a lot of the things we're required to build now.
Yeah, that's totally makes sense. And I actually have our maybe like two more questions around the marketing and trends. So kind of my take on this conversation was that currently marketing and any other product like roles realistically in the era of AI are the ones that start moving from like administrative to more meaningful work, right? We start like doing actually more strategic, more difficult things that we might have procrastinated before. Now we can't. So an interesting thing that you kind of mentioned about Gen AI and AI in general is that we now have to understand the psychology very well because we need to understand how buyers make a decision to buy, what like questions do they ask chat tools in order to make those decisions, right? So how can we realistically like understand that? So how do I go and understand that the CTO who will purchase my tool, like how their day looks like? Do I do interviews or do I ask ChatGPT or like where do I start? Where do I understand the psychology of a buyer, which really will drive everything when it comes to go-to-marketing?
So first you would have had your alpha and beta group that informed your product development. We will assume you've built this SaaS application because there was a group of people that qualified demand for it. So we start there.
Okay.
Right? And we incentivize it. Sometimes it's just coffee. I feel like anybody will respond to coffee, or maybe it's just me. And sometimes we expand that group and do like a formal, there's companies like Sentiment, which is with a C, or Winter that we can do B2B interviews with, right? And get that first party signaling of what's top of mind for these personas. The other thing is when we go to our alpha and beta users, I think we don't spend enough time as marketers to sit with the product team to build in feedback loops in the UI, right? So, because when you think about it, right? If somebody wants to learn you and they sit down and for an entire hour, they're just grilling you, they're like, what is your name? Where do you live? What kind of food do you like? How many kids do you get fatigued? Right? And then you just start like going through the motions. But let's say they ask you one at 8 a.m. It pops up again at 12 p.m. Pops up a couple more at 4 p.m. So within the product UI, we have a wonderful opportunity to organically ask our users and probably prospective buyers if they get like a freemium, if you have a freemium model, to ask these qualifying questions around their day-to-day, around their role challenges, around their own personal thoughts about what's happening in the industry. So for instance, we see in the world of modernization or AI modernization, there's so many coding agents and they're becoming more and more sophisticated. And, agents have a challenge with maintaining memory over long query periods. Instead, we've seen that change with Anthropic having some new product releases in the past couple weeks. When we think about how fast AI is changing, we want to understand how do you feel about that information, right? So getting feedback about their day-to-day doesn't necessarily have to be about literally Like, what does your 11 o'clock look like? It can be like, you may have noticed that AI agents their memory is increasing in accuracy. Do you believe that? Would you be using AI agents in 2026 in your modernization? Right? And you start to get into the mind of your persona of how do they feel about these technologies. That informs two things. That informs your marketing content calendar of like, hey, we're really seeing people are passionate about this, they're concerned about this, they're excited about this. Let's build a campaign around that. But then on the product and the engineering side, we get insights around what actually matters to them. Because sometimes with new technologies, some decision makers don't care because they have a tool that they like. The way the tool is going to work with or without AI is kind of the same. And when they're ready to learn more about it, they will. But it's understanding what pieces of information from a product marketing standpoint and a market update or research standpoint matter to them and compounding that information into go-to-market messaging, as well as informing our product development to make sure that we are adapting to what the future buyer expectation is.
Okay, yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing that, and I hope this, amazing discovery and amazing experience that you have will be very useful for our audience. I personally learned a lot, even about potentially like our personal marketing or like a podcast marketing, because this is exactly what we are trying to do here. We are trying to get into the, psychology of moms who work in SaaS or have their startups and like target them. Yeah. So we are definitely, and I was thinking already, like, how do I get into AI? How do I get into, ChatGPT so that yeah.
Not to cut you across, but to that point, I would say, especially with Claude, when I have asked it to mimic a persona, it has been quite effective in giving qualitative feedback. And I think something with AI, we have to sort of make a pivot in how we think about it, is we have to go from attribution obsession to decision support obsession. So with AI, you can model scenarios and patterns instead of like trying to get specific data points of like input, output, input, output. If a mom infected this, she means that, right? Versus a cohort of moms of this age, they may have this size of company. These are their expectations in their working conditions, or they may be pro hybrid or pro remote. When we do that, we move towards decision support obsession versus attribution on data points. We move from like, which channel matters the most or which asset matters the most to what data and signals are we making better decisions with? And then we increase the signaling of that. So by using the synthetic interviewing with AIs about the target you want to attract, you can get signal data that you can then test. And then in the real world, if you're like, okay, yes, moms do feel this way, and they are thinking that way, and they are making these decisions, then we can build formal programs around that to get actual human beings to either fill out a survey or use the product to then validate that inference.
Okay. Yeah, that's I guess we have a lot of things to do now. Well, in addition to you, having your own business, having your own agency, which likely is hard because you are constantly trying to acquire clients as well as provide, service is difficult, consulting is difficult. I was also amazed that you are also a mom of 3 kids under 5. I'm here personally already enough with 1 kid and having a lot of support of grannies and a partner who is flexible. So, Chae, how are you doing it?
Well, one, I think a lot of moms do it. Like we do it and we're amazed that we're doing it because it feels, there's a meme it makes its way around Instagram. Basically, being a toddler mom is like if you woke up in a tent and you saw a bear, like that's how you wake up in the morning. Like that's the mood you get up in until they go to bed. And I think it hasn't, the day I was told I had to deliver my first son, who will be 6 in March, was the day I kicked off my first major contract as a consultant. And then I had 3 kids. Yeah, 3 kids in 4 years. So I grew the company during making babies. And I always recommend that if you cannot do that, as hard as it is to the opportunity cost of your career, because that's the thing, right? Most of us decide to have kids, late 20s or early 30s, for me, with mid 30s, because for 3 years we were trying and it didn't work out. That's also the time in your career where you're getting opportunities, where you have that growth potential. But mentally, what it did to me, I felt both things were suffering, where I was with my babies and extremely tired and exhausted. And I was building the company and it was growing, but I didn't love any of this work. So I think being a working mom in tech requires us to be flexible in our pace and our expectations, because the toddler phase ends and now he's crossed 5. He's already like, I have to beg for a hug. I have to beg for him to like sit down and have a conversation. He's already, like has his own little things he likes to do. So I'm really latching on to the 2-year-old and spending time with him. But then it does get really dicey sometimes if I'm at a conference or I'm on client calls, because it's another part of the world. And he doesn't understand that. So I do feel like there's a lot of intentional trade-offs and like constant recalibration. But what I do every day is I know this might suck in the way I say it, but I'm gonna fail every day. But as long as on both fronts, as a mom and my job, I'm not I'm not going below 6, we're fine. If I feel like, no, something here has to give, I will recalibrate. But the biggest thing has been I can't be rigid in my goals. I have to stay flexible, because there are times all 3 will get sick. And it's literally, we're no longer operating in that time where there's this massive tribe of people. My family lives in Trinidad. They all go to school full time. We do have family members, but they also have working schedules. So if that happens, my first thing no longer is to panic and be like, oh my God, my clients and this. It's like triage. Okay, this is not going to be a week we're taking on any extra. We're doing takeout. We're going to see, we have doctor visits. I'm already going to put blocks on my calendar, right? I'll talk to the team and see anything that they really need to be on top of, so the client doesn't feel the less of my communication, because I'll be withdrawn a bit. And so far, I think I've found a groove, but I think I constantly have to push on the flexibility thing, because I don't like it. I don't like kind of not knowing that, I can do this and this and this and this. But that's the nature of being.
Yeah, this is something that I didn't yet master for sure. I'm struggling with it. I recognize I have to work on this, but to be fully honest, it's so hard for me, because I think just my nervous system regulates if I'm a little bit more predictable, but being predictable is not what motherhood is.
Yeah, I learned that the hard way. I think it's like interesting because obviously I think we all came from a career is like if you put the effort and then you put in the work, you kind of get the output, right? I think one of the hardest lessons for myself, it's like parenting, it's far from that. It's like, it's far from that.
It's just unlimited input. There is no output, or maybe it is, but not direct.
Yes. And trying to like kind of figure that all out, trying to balance it all. I think that was the primary reason we kind of started this too, was like, man, like Anya and I were constantly venting to each other.
It's a lot. And I think emotionally is about letting go of the fantasy that I can be all in on everything at once. So Michelle Obama says that you can have everything, just not all at once. And it's very true, right? So I measure success in like weeks and quarters. And I think it's really important that you do that. That when the smallest of things, that you keep a running list of the things you've done for the quarter. Because you may have goals that you missed or you haven't made progress on, but then there's a bunch of things that you managed to get done. And you don't even know where you got the bandwidth to do it. Slow progress is still progress. And what is sort of disappointing when you become a parent is you realize just how much you can be a great parent and things still suck. Like your feelings, regulation is a fun thing, right? For me, I have low grade depression. What will happen, especially when I'm not tracking or pacing with certain goals, I will get into a funk. And then I will feel guilty because when I'm with the kids, I'm there and I'm fun, but I'm not feeling fun. And I'm like, then I'm mad at myself because I'm like, I'm not present. Right.
Yeah.
And my own therapist had to tell me once, she's like, your presence isn't about the amount of time you're with them. Right. It's more so about if you need to regulate and go get a coffee, or you need to put your headphones on, or you need to go for a walk, even though your brain's telling you, oh, I didn't spend time with the kids for the day, you need to be right, or you can be right for them. So we have to, I always say, working in tech requires you to have an athletic ability to absorb gaslighting, competitive egos. Like it's just the nature of the job. Coming from energy, it didn't surprise me. It just was fatiguing, right? Because it was just more people at a time. And there's not much you can do about that. It is the nature of the industry. When it comes to the end of the day and I close the laptop, as much as I wanna, because I know I have clients in APAC, I want to open back up the laptop to see if they responded, because sometimes I don't have the email app on my phone. That's another thing. I take apps off my phone. So I don't have social media apps on my phone because I don't like picking up my phone when I'm with my children. And mainly because there will be a point that they are 16 and 17, and I don't appreciate that they came home for, the summer, and I can't get them to have a conversation with me because they're on their phone. So as silly as it sounds, I do take these little kind of strategies or coping mechanisms to help me switch modes. Because as long as the modes are muddled, so the working mom, working person, and the mom, and the wife, and we're all operating in the same time, the anxiety is here. So I do need to tell, okay, working person, we need to take a break. And I'm going to switch into mom mode, but maybe I need to have coffee in between. Maybe I need to just do some laundry. And we're like, okay, modes are switched. Because then when you're working and you're trying to finish that email and they rush through the door and you're like, oh my God. And then he jumps on the laptop and then you just kind of feel the level rising and you're like, oh God. And then your partner, you're just like, couldn't you grab him? Didn't you see I was working? And your person's like, you just walked in.
Yeah. We're partners.
So, it's definitely constant learning. The last thing I will say is, you can be the best parents in the world. Your kids are going to do what they want to do. My third, he throws himself on the floor. And I remember laughing at myself once because I would look at parents like that and I'd be like, why are they letting their kids do that? Like, that's not, like they should talk to him. Oh, okay. Probably nothing to do with the parents at all.
Yep.
That's the kid.
Yep.
Just got to roll with the punches.
We talked about that a lot too. Like I used to judge parents. I'm like, why couldn't you just help your kid up? He's crying on the floor in a mall or crying his head off on the airplane. And it's like, okay, now I've experienced it many, many times myself. There's nothing you can do except,
Nothing you can do
yeah,
except hope the earth is going to open up and swallow you. But
yep,
beyond that, you're
exactly.
just like, what it,
Like find me a hole that I can hide.
it
Yeah,
happens.
it was, yeah,
No, go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just saying that it was funny because recently I did have a flight with my 11 months old and he was crying and I couldn't do anything about him. And I honestly didn't expect it because he doesn't cry too much in real life. And I guess the pressure, as well as the fact that he couldn't be independent, like play everywhere and run everywhere, like made him upset, as well as nap times were off. So everything was just off. So he cried pretty a lot. I was shocked. I didn't know that it will happen. But it was just funny because there was like an old lady sitting next to us, and she's like a grandmother already of like two grandsons or granddaughters. But she was like, "Oh, you behaved so well." I was like, "Really?" I think he behaved terribly, and I was embarrassed because he was crying and I couldn't do anything. But I guess the experienced woman, like honestly, our society deserves this. This experienced woman said, "You behaved so well." I was like, "Oh, you're too kind."
Yeah, for sure. I think moms emphasize a lot more now that knowing that, this is a hard moment for the mom and the parents equally.
Well, that is, you bring up a good point because when we think about our sense of self working in tech, we have a very high bar of productivity that we're always trying to hit.
Yes.
And unfortunately, when we become parents, we forget that is a whole different thing. There's no productivity meter on being a parent, right? How do we optimize nap time? How do we optimize how we optimize your reading skills, right? And I do think when you work in STEM, that can happen because you have this mode that you operate under. Like, how do we make things more efficient? How do we create more comfort or convenience? And we try to translate that into parenting. And that's why, like, sometimes, especially as working moms, you have seasons, right? Where you have to pull back your pregnancies, newborn phases, relocation sometimes. And you start to think, okay, I have to pass on certain goals, I have to pass on certain clients. But then in those seasons, we also get an opportunity to figure out exactly where we want to go based on the life we're building. A sense of urgency, because when you're working, it matters, right? Like, you know that time doesn't come very easily, and you kind of treat it with a lot of respect. Like, okay, I'm working now, I want to get stuff done. And it really transforms your ability to be a flexible parent as well as a more productive person versus when before you were a parent, you just kind of looked at things in these blocks and you're like, okay, I'll optimize this way, or I'll be more productive this way, or I'll get this app, or whatever it is. But I think being a working mom really gives me a skill set that translates into your job of looking at problems no longer as big and bad, because technically you're solving problems with them every day. Like, whenever you have a kid that it's sleep time and for whatever reason their eyes aren't closing, and you're just like, what's happening? Like, you go from panicking to be like, okay, well, we'll try this, or we'll try that. And then I find myself there are some problems in my job that would be like, why is this not working? And now we're just like, oh, let's try this and let's try that. Now I don't have the data to prove that. But I do think a lot of what we learn in becoming and getting comfortable with being a working mom translates into how we continue to improve productivity without it working the other way, where we're trying to be super productive as a parent. We start off that way, but then we learn, okay, well, no, the different rules apply. It's a whole different thing. It's not like a career.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that was a hard learning for both Anya and I, because I think, like you said, we're very like just productivity, and then it's like, hey, how come I'm doing all these things for, as parents and things, and I'm not getting the results or so-called results back. It's like, hey, how come I can't get my kid to sleep at this hour? Or like, how come he's not listening? I'm trying my best, like all these things, right? So it was definitely a hard learning for myself because I also have three kids. I have a 8-year-old and twins. They're 5. So yeah, so it's been quite a journey. Speaking of that,
Yes.
like what transition for you was the hardest? Like from one, two to, 3?
I would say it really was one. By the time too, so I have uh, a son, a daughter, and then a son. And I had substance rules about parenting, and they were all demolished. And with him, he was born 5 weeks early, so he was a preemie, but he came out of the NICU after he only stayed that long because of jaundice. And I didn't adapt well in the sense that why is he eating? And like, maybe we need to give him this milk, and everything was frustrating to me. And when I had the second, I relaxed a little bit. She was also very chill. She is actually quite hilarious and she's a fun one. And then when I had the third one, I always said he got the best version of me as a mom. Like, I think it's only now. He's going to be 3 next July, and it's only now he gets discipline from me in the sense of like stern talkings because he got like a very loving mother. And because by then, nothing scared me as much, nothing bothered me as much. The operations of the company didn't feel as daunting as it once was. So there is a part of me that always with my eldest, I'm always almost like apologetic in my tone, like I can sense it because I feel like I denied him of a mom that was really tuned in. I was just so overwhelmed by what it actually was to be a mom and then also do this. He was born the week COVID was called a pandemic and the world shut down. So my mom actually got stuck here for 8 months. She came and 2 days after the hospital was on lockdown, the airports were closed. I would say that was the hardest transition. So I actually have people asking me, who are recently, up till yesterday, a friend is getting married. And he was like, so what is your take on, would you recommend that people have kids? I'm like, there's no answer to that. You have to really talk about what you think having kids brings because the amount of flexibility that is required, you never really understand that until you're in it. When you're in it, there's nothing we can do. And now they're coming out of the toddler ages, they're playing with each other, they're like little people with things, and we love it. We absolutely love it. But the first one really did me a doozy in where the hardest part was understanding the difference between my capacity and my ambition. And I had to make amends with my capacity and my ambition did not line up. So
So, do you mind me asking like a little bit personal question because I resonate with it a lot. Like, like I very much can reflect on the same experience with my like first child, right? And this does kind of give me some thoughts around that, like I'm a bad mom, or maybe I'm not designed to be a mom, or things like that. But I'm just wondering, like you having that experience, how did you decide that you want a second one? Like after having quite difficult, overwhelmed, frustrating experience, what prompted you that, okay, you are ready for the second child?
I started to design my life around actual constraints. So I stopped focusing on my ambitions and looking at what am I actually working with. Realistically, at the time, 20 to 25 hours is all I could do. So that means fewer clients, deeper engagements. If I focus on West Coast clients, I can start later. That gives me time in the morning to get up with the baby, get a sense of self. I can have some part-time help. And that the guilt started to ease and the uncertainty started to ease when my life and my expectations were aligned with my bandwidth. So when Ali was coming, I knew how I would run our day to day. With Arrow, I had no context of how the day to day was going to change. And because I was getting tripped up between what I wanted to do and what I could actually do, every day just felt like a monster to conquer. So I found that having Hallie and then having Aaron had a lot to do with being very much purposeful about and truthful about my constraints and what's possible when they are coming, when our family is growing. And then now even releasing some of those constraints as the youngest just turned 2, because once they're all 2, I found that they started to like make leaps because they're verbal, they're getting potty trained. So you start to free up now. You're just like, they're helping each other. So it goes both ways. You go through the phase of like, okay, I can't do this, I can't do that, I can't offer clients this. I definitely shouldn't be doing EMEA clients now, da da da. But then before you know it, you're like, oh no, all right, look, he's in school full time. So now I can go into the city and now I can do more client visits and now we can do more. So it was also recognizing as you decide to grow your family, everything has a time. I don't think it's religious. They're going to say the best way out is through, is recognizing the through always feels hard. But before we blink, they're running off and we're like begging them to be like, can I get a hug? Can I get a kiss? Can I get a snuggle? So it's never easy. I think once you start to grow the family, then the dynamics change. I don't know, Wendy, if you felt this way. I was a little bummed. I feel a bit bummed sometimes where a lot of my time will have to go with the younger ones and the elder one. Like I want that one-on-one time, but I'm like, where do I carve it out? And it's not like you can just take them because the other 2 will see, but I didn't cherish it in the way I should when I had just Arrow. And
Yeah.
just that one kid was so cool. And when you have multiples, you do say bye to that because now you're trying to, it's a needs basis in that first year of life. What does the younger one need? And then it's about equity in attention.
Yeah, I totally resonate with that. I think it's the hardest for me was when the twins were born, like the first year. And with double of them, it was like my full time was dedicated to them basically. Because the one cries, the other one, and it's like feed, and then, it's like, how do I juggle all that, right? So I do feel a lot of guilt with my oldest one. And I think I think it's a lot easier now that he's older. So he sleeps a little bit later. So I do have that one-on-one time with him. But definitely the first few years was very, very tough. And I always feel that guilt.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. I think that was amazing episode where we talked about a lot of professional, like we learned a lot of professional marketing insights, and honestly the advice was like amazing. Thank you so much, Chae, for joining our podcast. And we are, as always, we are dedicated to talking about things that are important and can help our moms to thrive. So please, everyone who is watching us, subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spotify, and other podcast platforms, and comment on things that you would like to see and or talk about in the future. And let us know what is your current mom's challenge is, so that we can further discuss it. And with that,
And Chae, is there if people wanted to connect with you, what's the best way?
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn is it's LinkedIn/Chaenara, CHAENARA. You can also find me at pod-bakery.com, but LinkedIn is probably the best way to reach me.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much, Chae, for joining and chatting with our audience. We'll see you next week. Thanks, everyone.
goodbye.